All right, welcome to pro football. First 50 years, where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now, I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. And especially if you're going to go back in time and check out a game maybe from the 20s or the 30s. Oh, sure, you can go online and find a box score, who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was, someone kicked, where the game was played at, what the attendance was. You might find starting lineups for each team. But exactly what happened during the game? Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, a little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos or nothing like that here. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on in today's game. Disappointing season for both these teams for different reasons. We got the Detroit Lions going to Kezar Stadium to take on the San Francisco 49ers November 1st, 1959. Now, these two teams had played each other 2 weeks prior. Now, what the NFL did back in the day, especially with the 49ers and the Rams both being in the Western Conference, they sent a lot of the teams out there for a couple, whatever, a 10-day stay or so, whatever. So instead of the Lions flying out, the week before this, the Lions played the Rams. And I know the same thing would happen with the Packers a lot. The final maybe 2 games of the season, the Packers were on the West Coast. They would play the Rams one week and they would play the 49ers the next. So instead of things are a little bit different, obviously. Back, 65 years ago or so, 66, 67 years ago. So instead of, in today's world, the team maybe flying out there and then flying back and then flying, they stayed out there. They flew out there and they kind of stayed out there. They played 2 games on the West Coast, then they came flying back. So, and the Lions had played the Rams the week prior in the Memorial Coliseum. But the Lions and the 49ers had played each other 2 weeks prior. They played in Detroit, and it was ugly. It was ugly for the Detroit Lions. Get rid of this here. The 49ers rolled all over them. Very, very embarrassing. Well, same thing would happen this time, too, except the score was even worse for the Lions. The Lions just did not have a good offense in 1959. Their passing game, I mean, their blocking was at times they had a decent running game, but for the most part, their offensive line was not very good. A lot of times, Tobin Road or kind of like it was Rykow or Omar or Tobin Road. Always seem to have roller skates under a lot of pressure. Not to mention the fact that they were throwing, it was like Oprah Winfrey show. Like, you get an interception and you get an interception. And they were throwing interceptions left and right. And this game was no different. They gave up the turnover margin was horrible in this game for the Lions. But I'll show you when we go over the stats. But it was not a good year at all. For the Lions, especially offensively, and this game would be a good example of that. Let me show you the schedule for both. I said it was a very disappointing season for both teams for 2 different reasons. Let's go to the Lions. I'll show you. I mean, you win the 57 championship. And 2 years later, you're winning 3 football games, and the teams that you're beating, horrible teams too. Share the screen. I mean, they just beat bad teams. They beat the Rams twice, who only won 2 games all year, and then they beat the Cardinals, who I think won 2 games all year. What are the Cardinals? 2 wins? Yeah, 2-10. So I mean, they beat some bad teams. They only won 3 games all year. They tied 1. They tied the Steelers, who were all right team. Steelers actually had a winning record. But other than that, it was just slim pickings here. Now you can see that this is where we're at right here, November 1st. 2 weeks prior, as you can see, the 49ers played the the Lions in Briggs Stadium, and it was 34-13 that the 49ers won. Well, this was even worse. This was 33-7. So what do we got? If my addition is correct, the Lions were outscored 67-20 in their 2 games of the 49ers. Not good. Now things were not bad in the preseason. It was just the preseason though for the Lions. Now, of course, the preseason was set for the Lions, for a couple teams, but for the Lions was 7 games. They played 12 regular season games, 7 preseason games. Could you imagine doing that nowadays? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But their preseason was rather successful. Now, I don't know. This is Pro Football Archives. They show the exhibition, the preseason schedule. Pro Football Reference doesn't. I'm sure there might be some other websites or whatever that show the same kind of thing here, but I always go to Pro Football Archives because they show the regular season and they show the preseason schedule. But this is wrong here. I don't know how to contact Pro Football Archives to let them know that they're wrong here. I don't know if they care. It's just a preseason game. Whoopie-doo. I get it. But the Lions did not beat the Cardinals 21-19. The Cardinals actually won this game 21-19. But even still, out of their 7 preseason games, they won 4 games. They were 4-2-1. The Lions. So a very successful preseason, but that was just preseason. Once the regular season started, it was a whole different bag of donuts. They lost their first 4 games of the season. The week prior, although they were outplayed by the Rams kind of gave the game away with turnovers. I mean, turnovers were a huge problem for teams back in the day. They were kind of like, it was like an Oprah Winfrey show. They were just giving them away like they were candy. I mean, a lot of these games, the teams turn the ball over 4, 5, 6 times or so. That doesn't usually happen nowadays. I mean, you turn the ball over 6 times in a game nowadays, some heads are going to roll. But back then, that happened quite often. I said so the Lions would finally beat the Rams, and they were 1-4. I mean, but pretty much by the time they were 1-4, they were pretty much almost out of the running for any type of Western Division title. Then they would get blown out here. Then they would tie. Then they would have a win, a couple losses. So it was a very, very disappointing season for the Detroit Lions, all in all. I mean, they were, if you look at it, they were pretty much the rulers. I guess you could say that they were tied with the Browns for the amount of championships won in the 50s. The Browns won in 50. They lost 51. They lost 52. They won in 54. The Browns won in 54. And then the Browns won in 55. That's 3. The Lions won in 52. The Lions won in 53. And the Lions won in 57. So the Browns and the Lions each won 3 championships in the 50s. So, I mean, the Lions, were a good team in the 50s. But toward the end of the 50s and into the 60s, they were more known for their defense than they were much for their offense. And interestingly, though, both these teams would be in a playoff drought for quite some time. They wouldn't make the playoffs. None of these teams would make the playoffs in the 60s. It wouldn't be till 1970 that both these teams made the playoffs. Of course, one of my favorite all-time games, and I remember actually watching on TV, the 1970 that the Lions would go play in the Cotton Bowl and lose the divisional round. I guess they were playing baseball that day. They lost 5-0 to the Cowboys. And then speaking of the Cowboys, they would beat the 49ers in the 70 championship game, which was the last game played at Kezar Stadium. Following season, the 49ers moved to Candlestick Park. But that's where this game was played at, good old Kezar Stadium. Now let me show you the 49ers. As I said, it was disappointing for something totally different. They started the season off and they lost a tough game. Now, this is at the time, this was a little embarrassing because the Packers the season before were straight trash. Absolute garbage. But of course, Vince Lombardi came into town, whipped the Packers around, right? And the Packers wound up having a 7-5 season. So at the time, it might have been a little embarrassing to lose to the Packers, but they lost by 1 point. But if you'll see here, right, they beat the Eagles, they beat the Rams, they lost a close one to the Packers, then they won 4 games in a row. Actually, they would be 6-1 at one point, and actually have they were in first place. They had a 2-game lead over the Baltimore Colts. They would wind up, they would lose 4 of their final 5 games to go from first place by 2-game lead. It was 6-1, and they would finish 7-5. So very disappointing. I mean, they said the first, 7 games of the season were, they were very close to actually almost being 7-0. But even at that, even if they were 7-0, they still wouldn't have won the division because they had 4 losses. The Baltimore Colts wound up only had 3 losses. So, but I mean, so to lose 4 of your final 5. Now, to be fair, they had a very, very difficult schedule here at the end. They lost to the Bears, who were 8-4. They lost to the Colts, who won the championship in 58 and in 59. Then they lost to the Browns away in Browns by 1 point. I'm sorry. They beat the Browns by 1 point away. I'm saying, but the Browns were 7-5. The Browns were a very good team. Then they lost to the Colts, who won the championship in 58, 59. Then they lost the final game of the season at home to the Packers, who finished 7-5. So their final 5 games were very, very difficult. So they did have an easier schedule in the beginning, but regardless, if you ask the 49ers at the time, they lost 4 of their final 5 games. That was very, very disappointing to them. So it is what it is. But they were still 7-5 all in all. Now this game was played at good old Kezar Stadium. So let's one of my favorite stadiums. Of course, I started watching pro football in 1970, and that was the last season of Kezar Stadium. So I only got to watch. Let's see, 1970. The championship game was in Kezar Stadium. The 49ers beat the Minnesota Vikings in the first round. So there was only one game that I think I actually ever watched at Kezar Stadium, and that was the championship game that the Cowboys won 17-10. But I mean, to go from Keith to me, I'm an old time fart. I would. Candlestick Park was nice. It was new and all, but it was on artificial turf, and I can't stand artificial. Football is supposed to be played outside in the weather elements on grass. You put carpeting down there, I can't stand it. But I'm just an old fuck, so please forgive me. So good old Kezar Stadium. Oh, Wikipedia. What do we got to say here? Kezar Stadium is an outdoor athletic stadium in San Francisco, located adjacent to the Kezar Pavilion. It is the original home of the San Francisco 49ers and the Oakland Raiders in just their first AFL season only. Kezar also hosts amateur and recreation sports leagues, as well as numerous San Francisco high school football games. Aha! 1920, Jack Spaulding proposed an athletic stadium in San Francisco, seating 50,000. That's a lot back in the day. Many business leaders, especially if you're talking out in the West Coast, that's a big stadium for being out there. Many business leaders in the city backed them, as would keep San Francisco level with other cities with large stadiums. 1922, San Francisco Park Commission accepted a $100,000 gift from the estate of Mary Kezar to build a memorial in honor of her mother and uncles, who were pioneers in the area. Wow. So she gave back in 1922, she gave a $100,000 gift. Wow. Just in a memorial for her mother and uncles. Whew. That's amazing. After the city and county of San Francisco appropriated an additional $200,000, ground was broken on the stadium on June 27, 1924, and the stadium was built in a year. Now, Well, I'll just show you some pictures of it. It was a little odd, but that's because of the way the streets were. It was a little weird. A little weird. Let's see. Dedication ceremonies were on May 2nd, 1925. Featured a 2-mile foot race. Stadium had many uses in the 30s. In addition to track and field competitions, Kezar Stadium hosted motorcycle racing, auto racing, rugby, lacrosse, soccer, baseball, boxing, cricket, and even football. Imagine that, huh? September 1932, the Australian cricket team played in North California, all-star team. High school football, college football, professional football. There we go. There's the original Kezar Stadium right there. That doesn't show you the oddity of it. I'm going to show you some pictures showing you kind of the oddity of Kezar Stadium. Kezar Stadium is the first home of the 49ers and Oakland Raiders, as well as many NFL Hall of Famers, historical NFL games, and the first alley-oop. The Raiders played at Kezar Stadium for their first home games in 1960 and at Candlestick Park during the remainder of their first 2 seasons. Before Frank Yoel Field was built as a temporary facility in Oakland, defensive end Jim Marshall of the visiting Vikings had his famous wrong-way run at Kezar Stadium in 1964 against the 49ers, although the Vikings would come back and they would wind up winning that game. Of course, Kezar had a poor reputation among NFL players. In his 1987 memoir, Hall of Fame defensive end tackle Art Donovan recalls the look of dread worn by visiting teams arriving at the stadium. Owing to its inadequate dressing rooms, long, dusty tunnel to the field, shredded turf that was a byproduct of rain and overuse, and goddamn seagulls that would arrive in the fourth quarter and start blanking on you like they were aiming. The 49ers played their final NFL game at Kezar in early 1971, losing the 1970 NFC Championship game to the Cowboys 17-10 on January 3rd. The 49ers moved to the more modern and accessible Candlestick Park, where they play. Candlestick Park was around from 1960 to 2015 for the 1971 season and played there through 2013. Kezar was also the home field of the San Francisco Stingrays, women's professional football team. Interesting. There was obviously the movie, a couple movies were there, concerts were there. There was demolition and reconstruction. With pending demolition, the bleacher planks of Kezar Stadium was sold off to fans at a party in 1989. The stadium was demolished and rebuilt with a much smaller seating capacity of 10,000. It really looked beautiful. Really, really looked beautiful. I do like, let's see. During the reconstruction, field and track configurations were shifted several degrees to move the stadium away from Frederick Street. A replica of the original concrete arch bearing the name Kezar Stadium was built on the west side of the stadium as a tribute to the original structure right here. Right, you can see it in this picture right here, Kezar Stadium 2011. Right. Renovations, all kind, so it's still there. So which is fantastic. Let's show you some pictures here. Got some pictures here. I always like that because I once again, I'm an old time fart. If you got some place that was a stadium and all that, I can't stand reading about it when it's like it was taken down, it was demolished, and now there's a bunch of row homes and a pizza parlor there. So I can't stand it. So it's nice that they're still using it as like a stadium. For field and all and everything. All right, here we go. Football, Kezar Stadium. There we go. All right, so we got some pictures here. Right now, I like that. I can't tell if they have. It's very, very difficult. There's another picture right here. This is the same game. I think they have a G on the side. Okay, which means this game was played from 1961 or later. All right. But I mean, just look at this shot from the end zone, or this here with the Packers, or the backs to the goal. The goal is right here. I mean, this is the goal line right here. I mean, my goodness gracious. Bart starts calling a signal. They got the ball on the 1 yard line. Unfreaking believable. Now this is the new Kezar Stadium. They got stands on both sides. I mean, just absolutely, fantastic. Looks like they got a track, right? Track around the field. Beautiful. Absolutely fantastic. It's because it's so much more obviously than just professional sports. It's high school and all kinds of leagues and everything like that would love to play on a field like this. So I'm really all right. Okay, right here. Renovate Kezar Stadium hosting Major League Soccer. Right, here's the arch right here. We got that right. And then the track, right? Track and field, right? Yeah, absolutely beautiful. 2 thumbs up, keeping it. Well, if you look right here, historical photos here. They got the Browns here. Here's the 49ers. Right? I mean, this is, we're certainly going back in the 50s with that game. That's for darn sure. Let's see what else we got here. Right, here's some of the, right? I mean, look, that's the 49ers there for you. Single bar face mask. I mean, look at the color. Look at that picture. Simply freaking amazing. Absolutely amazing. The color. I mean, you're talking the picture's by 70 years old. If not older. Fantastic. Absolutely amazing picture. Here we go. Y.A. Tittle right here. Right? Unbelievable. I mean, look at those uniforms. Here's Hugh McElhaney running. They called him the King. Hugh McElhaney. Let's see what else we got here. And I want to try to show you. Here we go. Here's a good. Oh, is that a good one too? Yeah, kind of. But this is a good one right here. See, you see, it's because of the way the street is behind here. You see how much of how high it is up here and all the way around, and all of a sudden it gets really low over here. Really, really low over here. There was something said, I can't remember exactly what it was, but actually there's like from behind the goal lines from here and from behind the goal lines, there's like, I don't know, like, I can't remember, more than half or something like that of the fans are actually behind the goal lines, which is weird. Because if you figure the goal line is here, you figure all these fans right from here, all these fans over here, right, are behind the goal line, or maybe even with the goal line and behind it. And then you come down here, So you see there's only a small amount of people here. There's a lot of people over here, but I mean, this big part of the bowl right here is, yes, there's a large portion of the people are actually at the goal line, or was it the 20-yard line and behind the 20-yard line or something like that, I read at one point. But you also see here, this is the only tunnel out of the stadium right here. So when the halftime and the game's over or whatever like that, both teams, one team's on one side, one's on the other, and they both come out here and they got to walk off over here. Let's see, but you can see there's like a wall right here. I guess this might be this wall right here. See, a lot of people. Always a lot of people seem to be showing up because they always. Maybe didn't have the greatest teams, but they had exciting teams. They usually had some good offense, as you can see right here, right? Same thing here. Kezar close to look. Right? Same thing. You see the wall there? Once again, you see here's the end zone. Got to be right here. There's the goal post right here on the goal line, right? But because the way the street was, they couldn't build this up. It had, they built the wall there, but they couldn't the rows. They couldn't, there was something I had an article that was talking about the crazy kind of design it has right here. There's only like 20 or 30 rows here, maybe 30 rows here. As we're up over here, there's like about 60 rows or 70 rows or something. It was really a lot more people over here than over here because of the way it was placed in the streets. I mean, that's the way a lot of the stadiums were back then. They were just plopped in between streets. Right nowadays, it's they're going to have a huge area. They're not putting it in between a couple city blocks. Stadiums, they build it, get a big, huge, for the most part, huge area. Got to have a big parking lot to accommodate all the people driving in and everything like that. So, obviously back in the day, as you can see right here, kind of maybe an overview, right? The street right here, and then there was a street over here. So, as I said, I did have an article which talked about, unless it talks about. Somewhere along the line, I said, instead of trying to read over all of this stuff and everything, there was an article I had that talked about the odd configuration of the stadium and why the one side of the stadium was only so high and all of that. I'm sure you can find something online about it, but it was just an odd built stadium. But as I said, I did get a chance to see one game in there, and that was the 1970 NFC Championship game. Unfortunately, I'm not a Cowboy fan, so unfortunately the Cowboys won that game. But that was the first of 3 straight years that the Cowboys knocked the 49ers out of the playoffs. So that's where some of that hatred first started between the Cowboys and the 49ers. And the 49ers got back at the Cowboys in the 80s. But all right, so what happened during the game? Well, we got a little bit of pregame here, a little bit of talk on the street. So let's go to the Detroit Free Press in November 1st, 1959 edition of the Detroit Free Press. Talk a little bit about the game here. November 1st. There we go. All right. Rare coast sweep? Nope, not going to happen. Lions primed for the 49ers. History old and recent is against them, but the reviving Detroit Lions are primed to accomplish a rare feat here Sunday and regain their lost pride. They meet the 49ers at 4:30 p.m. in Kezar Stadium, seeking a sweep of their 2-game swing to the West. In good years and bad, the Lions only once before have been able to swing back-to-back victories over the Rams and the 49ers. That was in 1956, a year they did not win a championship. Their chances to do it now are not as bleak as might appear, despite the 49ers' 34-13 rout of the Lions in Detroit 2 weeks ago. The Lions are on their way back to respectability after a dismal 0-4 performance in their season's first month. Last week's 17-7 conquest over the Rams in Los Angeles has brightened their outlook. Well, it brightened it for a brief period of time, but things are going to start getting pretty dim for them. There's something more. The Lions sorely want to whip Buddy Parker, Bobby Lane, and the Pittsburgh Steelers when they meet a week hence. By taking the 49ers now, they would be working under a full head of steam, the respect and comeback possibilities established. Coach George Wilson and all the Lions vow that this second chance at the 49ers will be nothing like the shabby first meeting in which the Lions hit a long-time low. They played a tight game against the Rams, one with few errors, and they have gained confidence. Well, the few errors they had there would have errors aplenty in this game. Earl Mall, whose solid though unspectacular play saved them a week ago, has been made the number 1 quarterback, and Wilson intends to sink or swim with him. Morrill himself has personal ambition. Cast off by the 49ers 3 years ago and discarded by the Steelers last year, the former Michigan State All-American has rare opportunity to make his detractors pay for his harsh treatment. Yeah, I mean, the teams will just let them go left and right. And little did they know he would actually take two different teams to Super Bowls, right? The Colts and he was a big part in helping the undefeated uh, Dolphins of '72 make it to the playoffs, obviously. And I mean, they would have probably would have made the playoffs without him. But I mean, he engineered after Bob Greasy broke his leg. He engineered the Dolphins for quite some time in the '72 season. So it's Morrow's responsibility to put zing in the offense, which has lagged all season. He will have Ken Webb, sophomore fullback, and Danny Lewis, sophomore halfback, in the running positions, and Jerry Reichow is due to be used more in the flanker back spot, which has been largely unproductive for the Lions. The Detroit offensive line is considerably different from the one San Francisco overran earlier. Charlie Ann is at the center, though how long his problem leg will allow him to play is of concern. John Gordy beefs up in the right guard post where the 49ers, Leo Namalini, crushed Lions rookies, and Lou Creekmore will be at one of the tackles. Missing, however, will be Harley Sewell, whose leg injury can keep him idle for still another week. The Detroit defense is solid again. Defensive backs played their best game of the year against the Rams, and the line work was the kind usually expected of the Lions. We think we're on the way back now, Wilson says. With the personnel changes in our line and some adjustments we've made, Wilson said we think we can hold them off. The 49ers are a 7-point favorite. I mean, what do you mean you've got a 255-pound man in your backfield? I mean, that was like one of their defensive linemen, 255, and that was a nice sized guy back then. I mean, not anymore. You're a 255-pound lineman. You're an edge rusher or outside linebacker or something like that. But Leo the Lion, he was good. He was really good. All right. So let's see here. I think that's it for this one. Yeah. All right. Let's go. And here's the right. As you see, Detroit is 1-4. See, but the Bears would finish 8-4. So the Bears will win their final 7 games. They started off bad. But you can say San Francisco was 4-1. The Colts were 4-1. But see, the Lions were 1-4. They'd be 1-5 after this game. I mean, whew. All right. So let's go here. What do we got now? We got, let's go to the San Francisco Examiner, Sunday, November 1st, 1959, of the San Francisco Examiner. There we go. All right. '49ers favorite today over resurging Lions. The pressure of proof will be heavy on the 49ers today at Kezar Stadium when they scrap to maintain their stake in the National Football League's championship race. Red Hickey and his gallants are host to the now healthy and determined Detroit Lions, and another packed house in excess of 59,000 will be on hand for the 1:30 kickoff. I guess 4:30 in Detroit time, I guess. It will be the last San Francisco 49er appearance. It will be the last San Francisco appearance for the 49ers until December 5th, when they return from the back-breaking 4-game road session to engage the world champion Baltimore Colts. Consequently, there can be no slip-up today if the 49ers are to take the byways and highways with something of an even chance of remaining in contention. There's the possibility, too, that Cleveland Browns will turn in a smasher against the Colts at Baltimore this afternoon, which would happen. Jim Brown would go off on the Colts. And the combination of a Colt loss and a 49er win over the Lions, which would happen, would indeed be a big boom to San Francisco's chances of bringing home the first division crown in history. However, the 49ers can't be looking elsewhere for help today. They've got their own big problem with Detroit, even though the records are opposites. The 49ers are 4-1 and deadlocked with Baltimore for the Western Conference lead. The Lions are 1-4 and hooked with the Chicago Bears in a tie for last place. It's logical that the 49ers should be 7-point favorites in light of these standings and the fact that the San Francisco 49ers took the Detroiters apart limb from limb 2 short weeks ago, 34-13. But it's illogical to assume that it's in the bag for Pro Football Surprise Club, thus far at least. This will be a different line unit than the hard-knocking 49ers maul for 300 net rushing yards in Detroit, with J.D. Smith, Joe Perry rumbling for 152 and 147 respectively. Yeah, so those two guys together ran for almost 300 yards. We got over here. Oh. Home. Then George Wilson's Lions were a demoralized, inept, lacking in desire outfit, which fell apart at a touch. Smith's 41-yard sprint on San Francisco's 9th offensive maneuver of the day. They also were crippled in the offensive line, with veteran center Charlie Ann sitting on the sideline and Lou Creekmore still meditating a comeback. Both will be starters today, applying their heft to prevent Leo Nomalini and the other San Francisco Red Doggers from tearing in on the Detroit quarterbacks as they did in the first match. Yeah, the 49ers were sending the backers quite a bit, and it really confused the Detroit line, offensive linemen, and they had a hard time doing much of anything in that first meeting. Now here you see the lineups for both teams. There's the defense. And here's each team. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yep. There's 18 players here. There's 18 players here. 36 guys on the team. Nowadays, there's a 53-man squad, but you can only dress, I think it's 46. So, and they complain today that the 46 is like, every man is so valuable and all that. Well, back in 1959, they only had 36 players. Or if you went back to 1925, they only were allowed to have 16 players. Imagine that. 16 players on your team in 1925. All right, so what happened during the game? Well, it wasn't very pretty. So let's go to the Detroit Free Press first. The November 2nd, 1959 edition of the Detroit Free Press. There we go. All right. Lions slip back in losing rut, 33-7. 49ers look like champs against us. This should be, I guess it's Joe Perry. Yeah, Joe Perry's got that. He's got a funky kind of face mask here. It's a single bar, but it's got like this little hump in the middle here. If you ever see a picture of it, it's kind of odd. Joe Perry of the 49ers leaps into a pack of Lions and comes up with the first down. San Francisco starts like house of fire. We were behind 14-0 before you knew it. Now, if you look right here, I mean, just Lions had 4 passes intercepted. They lost 2 fumbles. The 49ers had 1 turnover. The Lions had 6. I mean, right? The Lions didn't even have 100 yards passing. They completed 12 out of 29 passes. 84 yards versus they had, 183 total yards, 11 first downs, 6 turnovers. I mean, Jesus Christmas. Meanwhile, the 49ers had almost 400 total yards of offense, 20 first downs. Well, they only completed 12 passes, but they went for almost 200 yards, and they only had 1 turnover. A wise man once said knowingly that where there's a will, there's a way. There never was a more willing football club than the Detroit Lions Sunday, yet they didn't win. Jolted twice for touchdowns in the opening minutes, they bowed to the hot-handed San Francisco 49ers 33-7 before 59,064 people who sat in Kezar Stadium envisioning the city's first National Football League championship. 49ers looked good enough to give it to them. Overpowering line play, the passing brilliance of Wyatt Tittle, the hammering of fullback J.D. Smith, and great pass catching made them a firm challenger to the Baltimore Colts. This was the 5th victory in 6 games for the 49ers, and now they ride atop the Western Division race, looking more and feeling more like a great club in each outing. It was a sorry day for the Lions. Primed for victory, hopeful of regaining their lost luster, they gave San Francisco a might struggle through the first half. But the 49ers built a 21-7 lead, and the Lions' dreams of catching them after the intermission died shortly after the second half kickoff. From then on, the Lions had no choice but to take their beating. They took it, the 5th such in 6 games. Several bad breaks worked against the Lions, but they were plagued by weak pass receiving. And they've had problems, the passing, whether it was bad passes, interceptions, bad pass protection. I mean, they don't have a phenomenal wide receiving group. So their passing was extremely weak during the 1959 season. All the Detroit receivers dropped throws they should have held. Some came at critical moments. One of these cost the Lions dearly. Trailing 21-7 late in the second period, Tobin Rote, sore hand and all, came off the bench to replace Earl Morrall and sent the Lions whizzing downfield. He hit Jim Gibbons perfectly on the 8-yard line, but Gibbons fumbled. The last real Lion effort to get back in the game died there. It was gone forever when Tobin Rote was trapped for a safety opening the second half. Detroit did nothing thereafter. The blocking and tackling in this rematch between old antagonists was as vicious as any seen this year. This caused 5 Detroit fumbles. 5 fumbles, and they lost 2 of them. The Lions' own rushing of Wyatt Tittle paid off with 4 pass interceptions. Oh, so they had 4 interceptions. Oh, I thought they had 4 passes intercepted, so I guess I was wrong on that one there. So it says here, the Lions, their own rushing of Wyatt paid off. So they applied the pressure, and Wyatt Tittle had 4 pass interceptions. I had it backwards. So even though they picked off 4 passes, they still got blown out of the game. Wow. Oof. Detroit simply can't get its offense going, and without that, nothing else really matters. Rote and Morrall connected on only 12 of 29 passes, but let's go to page 40. You find it here. But Earl Morrall gives 49er Ed Henke the runaround. But the receivers are more to blame than they. This failing of the offense has seen the Lions score only 5 touchdowns in the last 3 games. So it's no wonder that they still rank at the bottom of the league. As for the 49ers, after only a minute and a half of play and on the second play from scrimmage, Smith cracked into right guard. Suddenly found himself free and raced 73 yards for a quick 7-0 lead. Wow. A few tackles later, Morrall was hammered, fumbled, and the 49ers recovered at the Detroit 33. San Francisco needed only 4 plays for a 14-0 lead. One was a 19-yard pass from Tittle to Billy Wilson, but the payoff was a 10-yard throw to Hugh McElhaney. I'm going to say it looks like 10. Morrow was in a desperate predicament. The 49er line threatened him constantly, mauled him frequently, and the Lions could not get an attack together. Then Jim Martin gave them a chance. He made a brilliant one-handed interception of a throw by Tittle and raced to the 49ers 14. The Lions made it to the 7, but decided then to settle for a field goal. That was unfortunate because Martin failed to make it from the 15. I missed a 15-yard field goal. Holy cow. The failure was quickly, forgotten, however, because the Detroit line kept Tittle under pressure and rushing him hard forced him to throw into the hands of linebacker Joe Schmidt. Schmidt, who never has scored in a regular season game, almost had it here. He rumbled from the 49ers 24 down to the 1. Then on the first try from there, Ken Webb banged for the score, which reduced the deficit to 14-7. The Lion defense thwarted a 49er drive opening the second period. Tittle, finding his receivers brilliantly, guided them to the 16, but the Lions held there, and Tommy Davis' field goal from the 23 or 23 was wide. Wow. Missing a 15-yard field goal, a 23-yard field goal. Wow. When the Lions failed to move after that effort, the 49ers took over on their own 38. On the first play, Tittle delayed, dodging the rushing Detroit lineman, then shot a screen pass to McElhaney. Behind magnificent blocking, McElhaney raced 62 yards to score and put the Lions down 21-7. Rote came in at that point. He responded with a 20-yard pass to Dave Middleton, then pitched out brilliantly to Nick Petrosani, who raced 37 yards to the 49ers 23. Then Rote hit Jim Gibbons on the 8. Gibbons snared the ball over his head, but a heavy tackle broke it from his grasp, and the 49ers recovered on the 10. Then came the safety, as Rote sought to pass the Lions away from their 20 early in the second half. Trapped by on-rushing 49ers, Rote dodged them from one side of the field to the other, trying to shake loose a receiver. The quarterback backpedaled so far, however, that Leo Nomalini and Ed Hinkey finally smashed him down over the goal line for a safety and a 23-7 lead. After taking Yale Larry's punt kickoff at the 47, the 49ers moved in for a 17-yard field goal by Davis, which I guess he actually made. That made the score 26-7. 49ers came smashing ahead again in the fourth period, chewing through the lines for 75 yards and 7 plays to put the game beyond reach, 33-7. Joe Perry raced 40 yards to the 5 to set it up, and Smith finally scored from the 2. We got here. All right, let's see. I think there was something else. Let me see here. Is there something else here? There we go. Earl Morrall, from hero to GOAT. Earl Morrall, the hero of Los Angeles, missed the big chance to establish himself as permanent leader of the Lions. There has long been a question of Morrall's throwing ability, and the Michigan State All-American did nothing to quiet the doubters Sunday in his starting role against the 49ers. Morrall completed 3 of 7 passes, which is good enough, but he was pulled from the game in the second period after 2 particularly bad throws in a tense situation. Tobin Rote placed him and played the rest of the game, hitting 9 of 22 throws. Rote played under special handicap, his fractured left hand locked in a cast. The two of them had as much trouble with the 49ers overpowering the line as they did 2 weeks ago in Detroit. They were smashed for 73 yards on losses, Rote losing 20 in one play, which was cost a safety. Linebacker Wayne Walker, the prophet, missed this time. Before the game, he said the Lions would win on a field goal by Jim Martin. A week ago, he called the Lions 17-7 victory over Los Angeles, which he did. Although he gained 115 yards rushing, J.D. Smith, the bruising 49er back, had to go about it in a different way. He ruined the Lions on end sweeps 2 weeks ago. That play wouldn't work here, so Smith tried the inside area of the line. He hit between right guard and left tackle for a 73-yard touchdown run, which shook the Lions in the opening 2 minutes. All right, so that is that. As you see right here. All right. Jimmy Brown roars down the sideline for one of the 5 touchdowns. He scored 5 touchdowns against the Colts. Whew. What can you say? He was the man. All right, so let's go to the November 2nd, 1959 edition of the San Francisco Chronicle. All right, what do we got? Page, what is that page? Page 28. All right. San Francisco Chronicle. All right. Whoop. So you went too far. There we go. Here's Leo coming in. And there's Tobin Road. Probably about to get smashed. Yeah, Leo coming in. He's got his fist all ready to cocked and everything. And he's probably about to get nailed. Leo Nomalini bore down on Detroit's Tobin Road on a fourth quarter red dog with Ed Henke left number 75. Road got this toss away for 8 yards, but the 49ers set a team record by spilling the lines for 75 yards lost on passes. So they got sacked for 75 yards worth of losses. Wow. I've got a couple stories here. All right, so let's start up over here. Smith's 73-yarder opens the route. Defense pins the Lions. 49ers pranced into the NFL's Western Division lead by tweaking the tail of the last-place Detroit Lions 33-7 yesterday at Kezar Stadium. The opportunity to ride to the top at 5 wins and 1 loss was presented by the Baltimore Colts, who forfeited their share first by losing to the Cleveland Browns in the East. This intelligence was known even as the 49ers were taking the field. An undisputed possession of the lead at this halftime point became a must. 49ers took charge almost as the game started when quarterback Whitey Tittle on second down faked the handoff most deceptively and then gave to halfback J.D. Smith. J.D. caught a gap over his own right tackle and burst through. Then he veered to the side and picked up assistance from a blocker and Clyde Connor. Only Terry Barr remained as a defender, and Smith shifted direction back to the inside, leaving Barr and Connor as spectators as he crossed the goal line. It was a 73-yard run, and after Tommy Davis place kick, the score was 7-0 in favor of the eventual winners with only 1 minute and 25 seconds gone in the game. Whew. Other touchdowns followed, and the 49er defense was fiercely vicious in there we go. Let's see. Here's another one. Is that Joe Perry didn't get very far on the third quarter. On this third quarter play, Detroit Lions Yell Larry, Gil Maines, and Bill Glass brought him down for only a 1-yard gain. There we go. All right, the throat clutcher against the Chicago Bears last week. This one was never really a gasper, and with the roughest part of the schedule directly ahead, a no-worry win was especially comforting. Cautious 49er fans who have been watching chances fade for a dozen years refuse to hope or even think about a championship until now. But with the league lead, the capacity crowd of 59,064 began to forget old times. Excuse the digression, but I wonder what is capacity for a 49er crowd. 59,064 six-packs probably. Back to the league lead. Whether they want to discuss it or not, 49 players and coaches and their fans are now as close to a title as ever. Certainly, they have the pole for the second half of the season. However, don't turn handsprings yet. The second half calls for 4 games on the road against some of the toughest foes, Rams, Bears, Colts, and Browns, and then a return to Kezar Stadium against the Colts and the Packers. Not a weakling in the lot unless you think the Rams are soft, which they are at 59. The road schedule could come up blank. Optimists see it differently. They see a chance to seize an even larger margin by knocking off the 2 closest to the top. 2 wins over the Colts, for example, could wave the flag. But the pessimists are aghast. Chicken counting before hatching is a watchword in the city, and besides, remember the Giants. So back to the game. The 49ers were leading 7-0 after 125. The 49er defense was alert and very physical, and soon quarterback Earl Morrall was forced to fumble on a handoff, and linebacker Jerry Tubbs recovered for the 49ers on Lions 33. Wyatt Tittle immediately passed to his bread and butter man, Billy Wilson, who ducked under his defender for 4 additional yards and a total of 19 down to the 14-yard line. Joe Perry lost 3 to tackle Gil Maines, but Smith at right tackle gained 6. Here, Hugh McElhaney, who had been out with a broken hand, took his position as a wide wing back to the left. Mack shot upfield, then turned toward the goal line, and the leather was passed perfectly, eye high for a touchdown. Defender Barr saw McElhaney, drifted wide with him, yet seemed frozen as Mack turned into the end zone. The touchdown at 6:45 of the quarter made it 14-0, and from there the defense made it a certain victory. Tittle was accurate and awkward by turns. He threw 4 intercepted passes, 1 more than he had in all 3 previous games. 49ers were in and out of trouble, but this was another day when the opposition was missing passes by a flick and when the home guard converted almost every debit into a credit. In fact, the 75-yard loss by the Lions in attempting the pass was a new 49er defensive record. 75 yards. Wow. Even they lost 20 in one play, that's still an additional 55 yards. I wonder how many sacks they had. Holy cow. The old mark was 72 yards lost by Washington in 1954 against the 49ers. Just before the quarter, a Tittle pass was intercepted by Jim Martin, but the 49er defense muscled up, and the Lions were forced to a field goal from the 13-yard line. Martin's kick was wide to the right, and that hurt. They missed a 13-yard field goal. What the heck is that? He couldn't even kick it 40 feet straight. I mean, 40, geez, wow. Oof. Oof. I mean, they don't even have 13-yard field goals anymore. Next, another Tittle toss was stolen by linebacker Joe Schmidt. Ooh, man. Who returned at 14 to the 1 before Bob St. Clair tackled him. The Lions scored on the next play as a dive by fullback Ken Webb. Jerry Perry, the ex-Cal man, converted, and at 14-7, the Lions folded their main for the rest of the afternoon. In the second quarter, 49ers match misses when Davis failed to connect on a field goal from the 23. But opportunity arrived shortly after Morrall's passes again failed to click, and Yale Larry punted. This gave the ball to the 49ers on the 38. And again, Tittle pulled out the long gainer. He faked to the right as a screen developed to the left. The lob was to McElhaney, and his wedge included Ted Connolly, Bruce Bosley, Clyde Connor, and John Gonzaga. Gonzaga pressed forward with a solid frontal block, and Perry braked and returned for a comeback block. McElhaney, the 8-year veteran, once styled the most exciting runner in football, flashed past with legs kicking and his familiar number 39 bounding and darting. He changed speeds and directions in rising rhythms as yard lines disappeared under his cleats. This was the McElhaney of old, and the spectators, including the 11 Lions, were entranced. It was a 62-yard touchdown. That made it 21-7. The Lions needed an offense, and quarterback starter Earl Morrall, the ex-49er, wasn't providing it, though he was unlucky on pass receptions. He was replaced by veteran Tobin Rote, and Tobin wasn't lucky either. A catch by Jim Gibbons was caught and then dropped as Abe Whitson crashed into Gibbons. Jerry Mertens, who had been under Gibbons, made the recovery. This was especially Tommy for the 49ers because Rote had engineered the Lions down inside the 10 until the fumble. He got down to the 8-yard line where he did fumble. So Davis punted 59 yards, sent the Lions back to the 31, and here the Lions gambled and lost. On a 4th and 21 to go situation, Larry faked a punt and ran 19 yards just short. Wow, 4th and 21, you fake a punt. Wow. The 49ers took over on the Lions 40, but Larry was able to stem the seemingly inevitable when he intercepted another tittle pass just before the half. Morrall's chance to win Detroit's quarterback job went glimmering, but Rote was not exactly a roaring lion either. Soon after the third period opened with the Lions on the 19, Tobin fiddled around looking for a receiver as several 49ers pressured him. The last of these tackled Charlie Kruger, pressured him right over the goal line for a safety. From 23-7, it went to 26-7 on a Davis field goal from the 17. Meantime, Rote was trying to pass, but 49er pressure was everywhere. Just before the quarter ended, the 49ers launched a final drive of 75 yards and 9 plays to score. Old Joe Perry, as frisky as junior collegian, bounded 17 behind Bosley's block. J.D. Smith fought for 10, and then Perry caught another hole and smashed his way for 39 more. The touchdown itself was a 2-yarder at right guard by Smith, and it was 33-7. The Lions didn't quit. A pass from Rote to Dave Middleton could well have scored because defender Mertens fell as Middleton was cutting around him. Middleton caught, but Mertens recovered at the last split second to hold the gain to 31 yards. Soon thereafter, another Rote pass was deflected by Tubbs and intercepted by Dave Baker on the 3. And here came a bit of crowd-thrilling deception with speed. Baker cut to the right for 24 yards, then lateral to the swift Mertens, who carried it for an additional 23 out to the 50-yard line. The Lions eventually held, though later a tittle pass to Connor for an apparent touchdown of 27 yards was called back for illegal use of the hands. Meantime, Matt Hazeltine, Ed Hinkie, Carl Rudke, and Monty Clark were making life miserable for Rote. Though it didn't figure in the scoring, and R.C. Owens' catch in the third quarter was, from a side view, as spectacular as any has caught going straight up. Tittle winged one hard and on a line headed for the middle of the 49er bench. Owens stretched his thin frame in a frantic dive, and his long arms reached as far as possible. He caught the ball for a 12-yard gain as it literally flew into a group of 49er players. And oh yes, John Brody finally got into the game at quarterback. With 4 seconds to go, poor John did his job perfectly. He sneaked into the line for 3 yards as the gun sounded. Wow. They couldn't have gotten him in there any earlier, huh? That's a shame. But you see right here, right? The Russian, a lot of guys ran the ball for him. Petrosani, well, the longest was a 37-yard run. So, but Larry got 18 yards. He needed 21 yards, and he only got 18 or 19 yards. The 49ers, Perry 14 rushes, 79 yards. Smith 19 carries, 115 yards. And there's the rest of the some stats there. There's a bunch of stats over here too. Whole lot of stats. A lot of stats. All right, what do we got here? Oh, there we go. Lions fumbled 5 times yesterday and recovered 2 of them. In third quarter, Nick Petrosani recovered his own fumble after a pitch out from Tobin Rote. Tackler is Matt Hazeltine, who got the game ball. Very impressive. Very impressive. All right, let's go back here. There was a couple of what do we got here? Something over here. Here we go. Brad Hickey, coach of the 49ers, and Edwin J. Anderson, president of the Lions, shared one opinion yesterday. It was that San Franciscans should go all the way. Just after Hickey had expressed that thought to newsmen, Anderson came through the dressing room to pay his respects. You can be proud, said Edwin J. to the redhead. You should go all the way. You men of desire. They tackle and they block. All true, however, there is another important item which may now be told. Because the Lions used a special defense last week to contain the Los Angeles Rams, where they like to hit on wide stuff around the ends. Hickey and his men worked on an antidote all last week in secret practice. Newspaper men are admitted but asked not to comment on special techniques. There was no special plays, just stuff we've always had, Hickey said, but we didn't concentrate on our interior plays just in case they camped on us as they did when they beat the Rams. Well, they were wide on the first play when McElhaney was thrown for a 5-yard loss, so Tittle called J.D. Smith over right tackle. J.D. raced 73 yards for a touchdown, and that undoubtedly helped to unstarch the Lions. This is a game of adjustment, said Hickey. If a team concentrates to stop one thing, there's always another way to move. I'll say this, Detroit was tough. That's a real good club, much better than we beat them back there. They're going to win a lot of games. I don't know how long it'll be before we lose, he continued. We're on top now, and there's no reason why we shouldn't stay on top. There's no limit to what this team can do if it keeps up this spirit. Detroit had bad luck in dropping some key passes. We made the big catch and the big run. That's what you need. Average won't do in this league. It takes those extras, like Smith's running. He dragged 4 or 5 men. He wouldn't go down, and neither would Perry. You ask which teams I'm afraid of? There's only one right now. That's the Rams in L.A. We play one at a time. After the Rams, we'll worry about the next one. I'm not going to make a prediction about the Rams. He predicted victory last time, and the San Francisco's won 34-0. The boys have been winning without my predictions, and so I'm going to retire. But I don't think the so-called Coliseum jinx will bother us again. Our guys respect the Rams, but they know that they can win if they block and tackle. The 49ers haven't won an NFL game in L.A. since 1953, when they won 31-27. The men cheered when they heard Baltimore got beat, but we don't expect anybody else to do our work. We were fortunate to win with those 4 interceptions against Wyatt Tittle. I never wavered in my confidence in him, and I didn't consider putting John Brody in the game. Hickey was asked why he didn't use Brody late in the game, with Detroit obviously beaten. All I think about is winning the game. I don't worry about getting men off the bench just so that it can play. Well, it's something you might want to think about. I mean, well, what if Wyatt Tittle gets injured? But don't you want? I mean, if you're up 33-7 in the fourth quarter, why wouldn't you want to put John Brody in there to get some practice just in case Wyatt Tittle gets injured? Right. So, when I put a man in the game, there's a reason for it. Hickey was asked about Earl Morrall reported statement that the 49ers were the weakest team the Lions had met. The Detroit quarterback denied he had made the statement. I heard several of the fellows talking about it. We had it on the bulletin board. I don't think it actually made much difference. And Clyde Connor said a lot of the guys were worked up about it, but not those of of us who played with Earl here in 1956. Didn't sound like him, but Kruger, rookie, and Charlie didn't know Earl, and he was pretty aroused. He smashed on a Red Dog and shouted, "Here's a kiss for you, big mouth." Kruger, a modest, polite Texan, preferred not to comment about the incident. "I don't want to pop off. Next week, somebody might hook me and rub it in with. How do you like that, you big slob?" Yeah, well, that might happen. Incidentally, Kruger, who received one of the injuries, a sprained back, yesterday, demonstrated the price all pro football players must play. The 245-pound defensive end stretched out on the dressing table while assistant trainer Link Kimura made necessary leg movements to help relieve the back. The big guy's lips trembled. He bit towels in agony. Pro footballers mustn't cry. And with clenched fists, drove his nails into his palm. At this stage, the injury looks like a minor, and the play for payers must shake them off. Whew, man. Hickey won't talk about casualties unless the man is definitely out of the game. But you can be sure that individual 49ers are hurting just as much as the visiting teams, some of whom make an issue of the injured. No pro team goes this far without considerable pain. Middle linebacker Jerry Tubbs, for instance, went all the way with bursitis in the right arm. He was hospitalized for 2 days last week for treatment. Matt Hazeltine, who repeatedly smeared the Lions for losses, was given the game ball, the first time for the brilliant linebacker in his 5 years as a 49er. Now, Hazeltine had a long career. His final year was in 1970 when he played with the New York Giants. He was number 64. So he had a long career, long football career. I think the Giants had to talk. I think he retired, and the Giants had to talk him out of retirement to play for the one season for the Giants in 1970. "I guess I was lucky a few times today," said Matt, "but I got burned too." And weary Dave Baker, with a comb sticking on top of his head, apparently he tired in mid-stroke, said, "I just about got burned. That Jim Doran is so fast, and I was so tired. I knew I was beat, so I tackled him. I figured the ref would call interference, and he did. Anyway, it saved the touchdown." Connor said he was definitely inbounds when he caught a tittle pass, which was ruled out. "That's why I cracked," said Clyde. "I slammed the ball down. The ref could have hooked me for 15 yards on that one. He was wrong all around on that play." Quarterback Tittle had visitors in the dressing room yesterday. They were his sons, Mike, who's 7, and Pat, who is 6, and both still have their hair. "Yo all," said Y.A. Tittle, presumably to both of them. "Stay here while I take a shower. Now you be good and don't fight." Tittle said he called some audibles during the game. They were ready for the wide stuff, so he called a lot of plays down the middle. Just before Smith made the last TD, Tittle turned toward his bench and smashed a fist against his open palm as if gesturing to Hickey, "Send me in some power." Hickey, who already had made up his mind, sent in tackle John Thomas for halfback R.C. Owens and powerhouse Smith. Thomas moved in to form the 8-man line, which the 49ers used for power plays, and Smith smashed 2 yards for the score. And some quick notes. McElhaney, when they asked about a 60-year run, "I guess the rest did me good. I don't get so many of these long ones anymore. 5 or 6 years ago, they came pretty often. Either I'm getting old or the defense is getting better." Connor, "The defenses are getting better." Then turning to rookie Baker, "The defenses are much stronger now. They used to play John Henry Johnson on defense." Ugh. Baker, oops, what the heck happened there? Baker said, "On defense?" Connor said, "Yep. John Henry Johnson on defense." Jeez. J.D. Smith asked about a 73-yard run. "Like I told you before, I was just running. I didn't have any particular plan when I gave Barr the stop and go and cut inside. I thought a million things while I was running, but not that. All of a sudden, my instincts just took over." Bob St. Clair was tackled Joe Schmidt on the 1-yard line to puncture the linebacker's dream of a TD after an interception. "Joe's a good friend of mine." he tried to inch away. Then he turned, saw it was me, and said, "Did you have to make that play, Bob?" Fred Dugan, Detroit's Jim David, said, "I blocked him after the whistle. He shrugged around on me for a while, but I had my back turned. I didn't know the play was over. All right. So let's go here. Then what else we got? We got there we go. Hugh McElhaney puts the 49ers at top 14-0 in the first quarter as he hauled an 11-yard pass for Wyatt Tittle, far left. All right, so let's see. What time are we at here? Whew. All right. Well, I got the Detroit. Let's see. Let me put this here. Where are we at here? All right. Let's do this real fast here. I don't think it's a big article here, so I should have some time here. This is from the Detroit News. Smith ruins the Lions. Not a very good picture, but over the top goes J.D. Smith. Here he gains a first down yesterday. It's Joe Schmidt, number 56. Comes up to the right to stop him. Terrible Lions forfeit their day off. To the visitors belong the spoils, and to the losers, well, the Detroit Lions had their day off taken away after yesterday's dreadful 33-7 defeat at the hands of the 49ers. Coach George Wilson, furtively looking to next Sunday's head-to-head encounter with Buddy Parker and the Steelers at Pittsburgh, canceled the traditional Monday off for the Lions because we looked so terrible. With a shoddy 1-5, one-loss record turning into the last half of the season, the Lions have their second poorest start in a dozen years of present ownership. It was a scant consolation to Wilson, who keeps hearing his bosses say that his job is secure, that the worst start was an 0-6 record in 1955 under Parker, which is so weird. I mean, because you figure they started 0-6 in 55. They went to the championship in 52, 53, 54, and in 55 they started 0-6. Wow. Wilson Riley recalls that a year ago the Lions slithered to a 1-4-1 start, and things didn't improve much by December. This Detroit gloom doesn't necessarily rub the gloss from another strong performance by the frenzied 49ers under the command of new coach Howard Red Hickey. If old Y.A. Tittle and several of his 30-ish teammates escape injury, the 49ers may sneak in for the first Western Division title since they joined the National Football League in 1950. Their proud 5-1 record is solid. This club should go all the way, President Edward J. Anderson of the Lions told Hickey in the hilarious 49er dressing room. You've got the desire plus the blocking and tackling of a champion. The 49ers will be a hard team to beat, said Wilson, who visited the winning clubhouse expressly to shake hands with Tittle. I admire their hustle. These guys got the feeling they can win now. Line coach Aldo Forte said candidly that the 49ers, improving on their performance of 2 weeks ago at Briggs Stadium, murdered us with their blocking and tackling. Buster Ramsey grudgingly paid tribute to the San Francisco's superb defense. Or defense? The Lions got the ball 14 times yesterday. Only once could they put points on the scoreboard. Ken Webb leaped over from the 1-yard line after Joe Schmitz had barely missed a touchdown while returning one of the 4 interceptions hung on Wyatt Tittle. Tittle hardly needed apologies for his day's work. The interceptions merely held the score down. The grizzled quarterback sprung halfback J.D. Smith up the middle for a 73-yard touchdown run on the second play following the opening kickoff. Less than 6 minutes later, Tittle shot a 10-yard touchdown pass to flanker Hugh McElhaney after the 49ers had pounced upon starting quarterback Earl Morrall's fumble. Detroit's touchdown reduced the margin to 14-7. It had little, and once again, this is the Detroit News. This is from the Monday, November 2nd, 1959 edition of the Detroit News. Let's see here. Down here. They had little more than nuisance value. Tittle responded by flipping a screen pass to McElhaney, who threaded his way through the bewildered Lions behind devastating blocking. The play covered 62 yards. The Lions had been blitzed. The second half was merely a mopping up operation. What made the Lions so helpless after perking up a week ago was a victory over the Rams at Los Angeles. We kept dropping the third down pass, explained Wilson with a stern look at his receivers. That has been the story all year. I don't know why we can't catch the ball. You never can get anything going that way. Unquestionably, the 49ers deserve credit for softening up the Detroit receivers. A pass catcher becomes timid when he hears hostile footsteps behind him, especially when the footsteps are tied in with tooth-rattling tackling. All the Detroit receivers had to share the blame. Jim Dorn made 4 catches yesterday. Jim Gibbons and Dave Middleton each snared 3 passes. Hopalong Cassidy had an off day with 1 pass. Steve Junker, sensational rookie of 1957, was been shut out for half of the season. Hickey is succeeding at San Francisco, where Frankie Albert failed. Said the Lions gave his club considerable trouble with shifting defenses. On Smith's long run, we hit with the right thing and could pop through there, explained Hickey. That screen pass to McElhaney was a dandy. I've seen screen passes reach the end zone before, but I've never had one that made me feel better. Hickey's not awed by his status of a 1-game lead on the Colts. When we started out, we figured we had to do our own work, he said easily. This hasn't changed. It makes no difference if so-and-so beats such and such. We've got to do the job alone. McElhaney and Smith each had 2 touchdowns, and Tommy Davis booted a 17-yard field goal and converted 4 extra points. But a large chunk of the glory went to Joe Perry. Joe gained 79 yards for his 5.7-yard average. Smith, once discarded by the Chicago Bears, amassed 115 yards and a 6.1-yard average. Whoops. And a fumble on a pass finished the Lions. It seemed to me that the key play in yesterday's defeat by the San Francisco 49ers was one play that we made and then didn't make after all. I'm not giving you double talk. The 49ers took a 21-7 lead in the second quarter, and we came roaring back. Tobin Rote picked us up by passing 20 yards to Dave Middleton. Rote then handed off to Nick Petrosani, who ran for 33 yards. On third down at the San Francisco 19, we sent in a pass play from the bench. It was a turnout pass to Jim Gibbons, who made a nice catch. He was inside the 10 when he was tackled, and the article said he got down around the 8-yard line. He was tackled by defensive back Dave Baker. Gibbons fumbled the ball, and the defensive halfback Jerry Mertens, recovered it at the 10. If we had gotten that touchdown, it would have put us right back in the game. This might have been the spark to let us win. Right there was the turning point of the game. No 2 ways about it. It was a tough break for Gibbons. He really got smacked. You have to call that the most important tackle of the game. The 49ers were tackling hard all day. So there we go. How the Lions turnout pass works. All right, so you got, where are we at here? And Middleton coming down here. I guess Webb stays in the block, I guess. Depends maybe if somebody red dogs over here, if somebody red dogs over there, they call red dog was blitzing. And they didn't blitz back then, they red dogs. They would send their linebacker. So I guess if maybe this linebacker red dog, Webb would stay in. Maybe if this linebacker red dog, maybe Lewis would stay in and maybe Webb would go out. It all depend upon if one of the linebackers red dog. But Cassidy went deep. Right, maybe kind of trying to clear things out over here. Lewis came up the middle here. Middleton came in, So Middleton was kind of coming over here, maybe, occupying him. Maybe Cassidy would come out over here, maybe kind of occupying him. Gibbons turnout pass. Ran over here, just turned out here. And Tobin Rote hit him. I think they said he caught it over his head. So maybe he caught it over his head. Right, and Baker came in there and smacked him real good and caused a fumble. And that those turnovers, they'll get you. But the oddball thing, right, is that also if you start thinking about it, is that that was a big one right there. But I mean, I had it wrong. I thought it said when I first read the turnovers, it said intercept. I thought the Lions actually had 4 passes intercepted. which would be on par for them because they were throwing interceptions left and right all season long, especially Tobin Rowe. He was well into double digits in pass interceptions. We're only like halfway through the season. So when I saw 4 pass interceptions, I thought, oops. I thought the Lions threw 4 pass interceptions, but the fact that Wyatt Tittle threw 4 pass interceptions and the fact that the 49ers still won 33-7, rather remarkable. But just goes to show you, I mean, up to this point in time, it just shows you how things were just clicking for the 49ers, and it was just one bad game, bad mistake, bad play after the other for the Detroit Lions in a long, long season for them. For the 49ers, they were 5-1. They would go on to win the next week and be 6-1, sit all on the top of the Western Division with only 5 games left to go. But it was not meant to be. They would lose 4 of their final 5 games, and not only they wouldn't win the division, they would fall into a 3rd place tie with the Green Bay Packers. So that's the way it was on this date, November 1st, 1959, as the Detroit Lions visited the San Francisco 49ers at Kezar Stadium in pro football's first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.